Okay. Well, good morning, all. My name is Marlene Aselta. I'm the president of the Southern New Jersey Development Council. We welcome you here this morning. This is the second in a series of the Southern New Jersey Development Council's public policy sessions. Today's discussion, planned by the Transportation Committee with co-chairs Gary Holfish of HNTB, Jen Grenier of WSP USA, Bill Brooks of STV, and Rich Hortzman of KS Engineers, brings DOT Commissioner Scaccetti to our forum this morning. Before we begin, permit me to give you a quick background of the Southern New Jersey Development Council, and then say a few thank yous and acknowledgements. We were founded in 1951 to unify the economic development activities of the southern 8 counties and to lobby on behalf of them. With a strong core membership and a long-standing membership, we believe we've done that over these past many years. In fact, we look forward to celebrating our 70th anniversary next year. Part of that success comes from the support of our members, 300 plus. And I'd like to give you an example and say thank you to today's sponsors. The title sponsor is HNTB. Host sponsors, Cross County Connection, South Jersey Transportation Authority, Associated Construction Contractors of New Jersey, and WSP USA. Supporting sponsors include Thomas Boyd Communications, French and Perillo Associates, Taylor Wiseman and Taylor, Triad Associates, and Urban Engineers. So starting us off today is Greg Lafraw, Vice Chairman of HNTB's National Toll Services. Greg's position includes all consulting services HNTB provides to the toll industry and is the project director for HNTB's assignment as General Consulting Engineer for the New Jersey Turnpike Authority. Greg has 40 years of experience in planning, design, engineering, technology, and operations for toll roads, toll bridges, and priced managed lanes. He is a leader in the area of tolled transportation facilities and managed lanes, having been involved in projects for over 50 toll agencies across the U.S. Greg will have the pleasure of introducing the commissioner, and following her remarks, Gary Holfish will lead the roundtable discussion. So Greg, it's off to you.
Thank you very much, Marlene, and it's a pleasure to be here this morning, and good morning to everyone. I'd like to introduce a friend of mine for just about 20 years. Diane Gutierrez-Scaccetti was confirmed as the 19th Commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Transportation on June 7th, 2018. Actually, she's been serving since January 2018. A native of New Jersey, Diane is a transportation professional with more than 30 years in the transportation industry and over 36 years in government service. Over those 30 years in transportation, she has served in various capacities with the New Jersey Turnpike Authority, including executive director. She served as executive director of Florida's Turnpike Enterprise, which runs a statewide network of toll roads in Florida. And now she is back in New Jersey as our DOT commissioner. Thank goodness for that. Diane is a member of the board of directors of the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. She serves as second vice president of the International Bridge, Tunnel, and Turnpike Association. She is the 2020 president of the Northeast Association of State Transportation Officials, and she's an executive committee board member of the Transportation Research Board, as well as the I-95 Corridor Coalition. Now that we have all that professional stuff out of the way, let me tell you about the real Diane Scaccetti. I've got 3 areas I'd like to touch on. First is mentoring. She knows that the future depends on the next generation, and Diane is excellent at mentoring and passing on her knowledge and skills. On a personal note, she sat with my twin daughters one day during the summer between their high school and college and discussed the future with them. They have since graduated college, and they remember that sit down with Diane. Second, she's extremely interested in advancing women in transportation. Diane is very involved and supportive of WTS, formerly known as the Women's Transportation Seminar. This group provides great opportunities for mentorship and collaboration, focusing on women in the transportation industry. I'm actually a member, and we recently got our own New Jersey chapter with a big help and a boost from Diane. Thirdly, and this needs no explanation, Diane is a huge fan of Disney, and that's all I have to say for my third point. Anyway, thank you for joining us this morning, Commissioner Scaccetti, and I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Greg. After you go through all the things I do in my professional career, I think I need to go and take a nap. But I've been very blessed in my career to be able to participate at a variety of levels in the transportation industry on the public side, and hopefully always represent New Jersey and for a period of time, Florida, at the highest levels of both integrity and professionalism. That's always our goal. Greg is right. I do have a tremendous interest in continuing to bring women into leadership roles in transportation. And we can talk about it later. We could talk about it in the question and answer period. But we are certainly in a pivotal time in our society and our culture where we are looking to be more inclusive and more diverse, not just race-based, but certainly gender-based, and acceptance of all different ethnicities. And so while I have always focused on, and it's probably just, at least I understand from those I mentor, it may be the maternal instinct, but I have several young women, both in Florida and New Jersey, that I work with just really to guide them and to hope that they are able to achieve what they want to achieve in their careers. And that means that they may never want to achieve a high level. They have other issues that they work on and they balance, but they should have the door open to them if they so choose. And that's really the focus. You know, we talk a lot about buzzwords in this business, you know, glass ceiling, lean in, and they're all great. They're phenomenal buzzwords, but none of them mean anything if there's no action behind them. And so we all have a responsibility to bring those young people, male, female, along, because I always tell people sometimes when I'm in a meeting and it seems to be going on forever, I usually tell them to hurry up. I don't have that much life left. You know, you're 61 years old and you have to start to say to yourself, who's going to take my place? Who's ready? And who's going to be a broad thinker and be a visionary? And who's going to carry the responsibility of making sure that we're inclusive with all of our communities. You know, I talk about the 21 counties of New Jersey being brothers and sisters with about 567 plus nieces and nephews. It's a lot to manage, and to sit in this seat, you have to have many characteristics. You have to be judicious, you have to be patient, you have to understand the business, the whole business, not just the little part you may have done for all the previous years. And so I really do think that everyone who is in this room with us is responsible at some level for making certain that we're teaching and mentoring and training and coaching those young folks that have developed an interest in transportation. And I guess that brings me to the point that says, you know, we're all in this room. Well, we're in a virtual room, right? We're all in a room somewhere. I'm in a room in my office, and Greg looks like you might be in a room in your house. You know, we are doing something we've never anticipated. I called 2020 the perfect trifecta. We have a pandemic, we have a presidential election, and we have unprecedented civil unrest, the likes of which we haven't seen probably since the 1960s. And so we have a lot going on, and we have a lot as leaders to manage while we continue to do the work of transportation. And so if virtual is the way we address it because of the pandemic, if virtual is the safe way we do this to make sure that not only can we all be together and still converse and talk and share ideas and debate points, then virtual it is. And so we make it work here at DOT. It wasn't easy. But all of you know that when the governor declared the state of emergency, he declared transportation as an essential service, and that included our construction. So the work of the Turnpike Authority, South Jersey Transportation Authority, New Jersey Transit, and the DOT have gone on relatively uninterrupted over the past almost 6 months now. And it's been an interesting process to get us there. But at the end of the day, our transportation system didn't put a pause on aging. It didn't put a pause on requiring work to be done. It didn't put a pause on figuring out how we were going to manage revenues in a time when people, for all intent and purposes, stopped driving, whether that was on the gas tax side of the house or the tolling side of the house, and then look at how we would recover from that. Because transportation, in as much as it provides the mobility we all need, whether public transit, personal vehicle, or commercial, it also is responsible for a huge supply chain where many, many jobs are affected. And so we have this really broad responsibility in our communities and in our regions, and we have to address that. So transportation continued on, and we continued to do work. I think, in fact, if there was a silver lining in this for us, it was that because volumes were down on the roads, we were able to accelerate work. We were able to convert night work to day work. We were able to advance projects and complete them sooner. And get, my goal is, get the orange barrels off the road as quickly as possible, right? Combine as much work, get out there, do what we have to do, and get in and get out so that our customers are driving open roads. That's the safest, right? Safest for them, safest for our workers, safest for our consultants and contractors. And so in this pandemic, in this period of time from March to, I would say, sometime middle of June, we really accelerated construction in a lot of areas. We closed ramps that we would never close during the day, but we're able to do so safely and without really impacting, again, our customers. We extended our closing hours. So instead of, having to worry about the peak rush in the morning and the afternoons, we were able to broaden those so more work could get done. Those were things that really made a difference for us. One thing that really, I think, was, it had its level of controversy, but I think at the end of the day, and I'm a little biased, turned out well, was the process of going through the toll adjustments for the Turnpike and SJTA. It was early in the virtual world of meetings, but both agencies really were at a point where their capital plans were at a halt. The Turnpike had run through its 2009 capital program. It was about $7 billion that was meant to cover 10 years. They did far more work with that $7 billion based on savings they were able to achieve than originally planned. But they were getting to the point where they didn't have the financial wherewithal to continue the work that needed to be done. South Jersey Transportation Authority has an extraordinary mission, but again, needed a toll increase probably for the last several years and had not been able to secure it. And so at the end of the day, while we had been working on this for several months prior to the pandemic, it seemed to all come together just before we got into the heart of the pandemic. And so Steve Mazur's on the phone, Greg Laflois and Gary Holfich were tremendous support to us in getting the toll increase process underway, along with others, went through a very careful process of developing virtual public hearings. And so Greg, as the project manager at the Turnpike, our general counsel, and myself participated in presenting the programs and presenting the financial aspect as well as the capital aspect at a variety of locations. The Turnpike building was one where we were able to have it in person with proper social distancing, limitations in the room participation. And then down in South Jersey, I believe it was Camden County College, right, Steve? That's where we were. We had some folks appear in person. We had a lot of call-in, and it worked out as well as could be expected. But interestingly, we got a lot of criticism for not having a truly open process. And what I think the most interesting thing that came out of that for us was that we actually got more public participation than we have ever gotten in the past. So when I go back and look at the Turnpike, my time at the Turnpike, and I was trying to think about, I hate to say all of them, but I was there for the 1990 toll increase. I was there when we raised tolls. I think it was in 2000. I was there when we did the toll increase in 2008. And most times you get a handful of people that show up at a public hearing, but we don't get like thousands of people or hundreds of people, as some people were. We had some advocates that were really not advocates of the toll increase, but environmental advocates and some others that said, this isn't fair. You're not giving the people, people come, hundreds of them. Hundreds of people never come. And I hate to say that is true, but sadly, people just don't go out of their way on an evening or an afternoon to drive to a public hearing on a toll increase. We'll get some written comments, but never to the volume or participation that we got in the virtual world. Because we were able to record our presentation, put it online. I think the Turnpikes was viewed over 2,000 times. People were able to comment for an extended period. We had more public interaction on this toll increase than we had in the prior 30 years. And so, and it was funny because people would start the conversation by saying, this is not right. People aren't being able to properly give their public comment, and then would go on for 5 minutes and give their public comment, which was all recorded by a court reporter. I think it was just really adjusting to this new world. And I think now by September, we're very, very comfortable in this new world, almost perhaps too comfortable, I would say, and need to think about the fact that we have to get back to some more in-person, maybe small group, but certainly in-person discussions, because it's important. It's important to be together. I was talking to my staff, we had a director's meeting, and I said, here's one of my biggest problems with virtual meetings. When you don't want to hear what I say anymore, it's just like this, right? You just turn me off. Then I lose the ability to understand what you're communicating to me with your body language, right? That tells me you don't want to hear what I have to say anymore. So virtual is good. We're always going to have some portion of it, I think, probably now forever, and that's okay. But it doesn't replace being together. And so, we were able to successfully move the toll increases. Many people said they were extraordinarily large. Let me say to you that in 1990, we did 100% on trucks and 70% on cars. I can't remember what we did in 2000, but then in 2008, we did a two-step toll increase that was 95% over 3 years. The toll increases that we moved this year was 37% on the Turnpike and SJTA and 26% on the Parkway, which are probably some of the smallest increases we've ever had. And we moved to an indexing model. So we'll index tolls by a few pennies on the dollar every year, 3 cents. And we think that that's a much more responsible way to manage the investment we make in transportation. It's more manageable for our customers. It's more predictable for the agency. And we don't go through these peaks and valleys where we're not able to do necessary projects until we wait for another increase. It takes the political nature of tolling out of the equation, which for a large part, our rating agencies, bond rating agencies appreciate, right? That's how they look at us. They focus on their certainty of our revenues. And bonding for roads, by the way, is not a bad thing, not unlike your home. Your home is an asset that you could have, from now till the rest of your life, 50 years. You wouldn't normally put out $400,000 or $500,000 at one time if you can efficiently finance that amount and then allow your own cash to earn money. A toll road is much the same thing. A toll road is going to continue to earn revenue infinitely. The roads aren't going to go away. So instead of taking a huge amount of cash and just putting it out, bonding is a responsible way to be able to leverage your cash and get much more work done. And so I think that that's something that's important for us to think about. And as we think about it, we have our two major highway projects underway in South Jersey. We have the I-295 Route 42 I-76 direct connection and the I-295 Route 42 missing moves project. They're two separate projects with the goal of improving safety and reducing congestion at this major interchange between South Jersey and Philadelphia. The Direct Connect project is DOT's largest project in South Jersey, and I would argue probably one of our largest projects generally. It will make improvements to that interchange of 295, 76, and 42. I drive through it fairly frequently, and I'm going to be anxious to see it when it's all done and just the benefits that it provides. Work is underway on contract 3, and the main focus of that contract is completing the new bridge. And most of that work right now is taking place off the roadway, so there's not a lot of impact to our motorists. It's expected to be completed in 2027, and I would love to say that 2027 is such a long time away. But I always think of Andy Rooney. He said the old life is like a roll of toilet paper. The older you get, the faster it goes. It's hard to believe we're already in September of 2020. I'm thankful. I'd like to wake up and thankfully be in 2021, maybe around April, so we can all avoid a second surge of the pandemic. But that's not going to happen. So we look forward to when it's open and to look at the continuous flow without the need for weaving or using those ramps that are at such a low speed of 35 miles an hour. We really just launched the I-295 Route 42 Missing Moves project. It will provide new ramps between 42 and 295 southbound and I-295 northbound and Route 42 southbound. It'll allow for direct movement of traffic between the two roadways that are commonly known as the missing moves. And it will, again, for a large part be built off system, so it should not affect the daily commute of our South Jersey customers. And that should be finished probably within the next 3 years. So that's all good news. It's a $180 million investment that we were able to commit. I would suggest to you that the DOT has been phenomenally successful federally in the last 2.5 years. So August 18, August 19, and August 20, we have received an additional $290 million from the federal government based on redistribution. So we get our annual allotment of funds from the feds every year, and it's very complicated because otherwise the federal government would have nothing to do with apportionments and obligating authority, and you get your money and you put it in buckets and you have to spend it in the buckets and so on and so forth. But many states can't spend their allotments for whatever the reason might be. A project could be delayed for environmental reasons. A project could be delayed for unforeseen circumstances in a department. So at the end of every year, the federal fiscal year ends on October 1st. They look at the money that has been unobligated, unspent, unallocated to whatever words we want to use, because I know we all use different ones. But in my world, monies that aren't obligated to a contract. And they collect all that money and they redistribute it throughout the country. From 2010 to 2017, the department in that 8-year period received $140 million. And there were years when we didn't ask for any extra money from the feds. I have strongly encouraged the staff to be aggressive. And in each year that we've requested money, we've received exactly what we requested. So as of next week, we will obligate another $150 million worth of work out of New Jersey DOT to advance projects that can have the obligations filed with the federal government by October 1st. So that's the goal, right? You have to get the funds obligated, this redistribution funds obligated by the beginning of the next fiscal year. And we are well prepared to get that done. And so in addition to our already robust capital plan of almost $1 billion, we're going to add 150 million more, which I think is really speaks volumes to what we're doing here at the DOT. And I'm very proud of the work we've been doing. I know that I have read, sadly, in 240 character Twitter posts, that perhaps the department isn't spending the gas tax the way people expect that they should. And I have no familiarity with the folks who are making those claims. But what I would say to you is, and I wish I could see if you raised your hands, but I will believe you are. Of those folks on the phone, of the 66 or so of us who are participating, how many of you have ever bought stock? A share of stock in anything? Greg, if I bought a share of stock in Disney, right? Well, you buy that share of stock. Do you think at the end of 6 months that stock's going to triple in value or make you rich? No, you don't. You know that investing in stock is a long-term process to be successful. And you balance your portfolio, and you hope that with the goal, you have a goal of saying that at some future point when I retire, I have this nest egg of money that has performed well over time, and I will be secure in my retirement. Well, transportation is not much different. The trust fund was reauthorized in 2017. That means our first revenues, well, end of 2016, but our first revenues really didn't start to come in until the end of 2017, because it takes a year, right? We're collecting those revenues, they're being paid in, and we're always working on the preceding year's revenue. So 2018 was really the first year that we could see benefit out of the trust fund. In 2017, this department, for whatever the reason might have been, did not allocate the $400 million to the local governments, to the grant programs that support the counties and municipalities. We allocated our traditional 200, but we didn't allocate the remaining 200. I'm told that they were concerned that the locals weren't prepared that quickly to spend that money. And so the department used it. And by using it, they cleared off the shelves of all of our existing projects that would have been ready to go. So when we started 2018, we really started with a clean slate. And for those of you, and I think all of you are transportation based, you know that it takes anywhere from 2 to 3 years to go from concept development to construction. Just to go through the process of visioning the project, doing preliminary design and coming up with your alternatives, finalizing your alternative, going to final design and getting it out to construction. So the idea that at this point in time, and I obviously you're going to know this is a point of sensitivity with me, is to look at the department who's had almost year over year between $800 and $1 billion worth of work in 18, 19, and 20, be criticized for not doing more. We have gone through a staff augmentation process to develop more design more quickly, but not unlike that share of stock, you have to give it ramp up time. And that's just the truth. And that gas tax that will be in effect over many, many years to come will continue to produce good fruit. And I would argue that it produces very good fruit with all the local entities, with our local aid program. And so don't panic. We may have used the 200 million, but we are paying it back $30 million a year as we go forward, so that the locals get every dollar they were entitled to. The local governments, the municipalities and counties are doing phenomenal work with that money. There are very few places that I travel through the state where I don't see both state and local road construction. And people may not necessarily like it because it may delay their trip or they feel that it's just going on too long. We have a lot of infrastructure to improve in New Jersey. And so I look out and say, we're doing some good work. Can we do more? Of course we can do more. That's why we apply for redistribution. That's why we look for more money. And so I'm really very proud of the work that the department is doing. But I am equally as proud of the work that's happening at South Jersey Transportation Authority. They have been phenomenally successful in getting ready for this toll increase to do some very important projects that they have had on hold, whether it be repaving, whether it be providing direct access to the airport to make it even more attractive to travelers, and whether or their support of the Glassboro-Camden Light Rail line. And the they're not doing Walter Rand, New Jersey Transit is, but South Jersey Transportation Authority will be making a significant investment in the Glassboro to Camden Light Rail to really advance that project. It is a project at the moment that is under DRPA jurisdiction, and we will work with them in terms of the financing, what needs to occur with the project. But the fact that we will now have, through the toll increase and through the South Jersey Transportation Authority, the ability to fund out the balance of what we need to do so that we can bring in a P3 to hopefully build and operate it, it should move much more quickly than it has in the past. And we're very excited about that. It will serve 12 communities. It's 14 stations on an 18-mile corridor. And again, bringing to some of our rural communities, and let me say, they're rural to us, but they're not rural based on the census. And so we try to differentiate the way we look at areas and communities that need transportation differently than perhaps you would if you strictly looked at the population numbers coming out of the census. So we're looking forward to that. I think having South Jersey help us with that is extraordinarily important. Walter Rand Transit Center is now under the process of design. New Jersey Transit has been able to move forward with that. And I think it's important because we all know it needs to be replaced for a variety of reasons. But it is a hub. And we then have to look at that hub, and I will work with Executive Director Doherty and Steve Mazur and the team at at South Jersey Transportation Authority to work with the community TMAs like Cross County Connection to try to help fund more what I'll call, first mile, last mile travel, helping us get to some of those rural communities to provide more of almost a micro transit. New Jersey Transit, with a 45-foot bus, it probably isn't economical for them necessarily to serve some of these small communities. But we need to be able to get some of these small communities to New Jersey Transit hubs to access employment, healthcare, and education. Very important to make sure that we connect our rural communities to opportunities in all of those areas. And so SJTA already has a fairly developed program, bus services program, and we're going to look to expand that to provide even greater service. As you're developing some of your warehouse districts down in South Jersey, we need to be able to address how we get folks to jobs there in a reliable way. Not because I'm worried about the warehouses, but I think it's important for us to be more worried that we have the opportunity for families to have a quality of life that they deserve and access good jobs that a lot of these warehouses provide, or go to be able to attend school and develop new skills and be able to enter the job market in different arenas. So we'll be working very closely with them on that. And the piece that I'll close with is our efforts as a transportation sector, which would be DOT, Turnpike, South Jersey, and Transit, to begin the process of converting our light duty fleet to electric. So we are together working on a plan to build out public use charging stations. And I say public, not the general public, but government public charging stations where we'll all be able to convert our fleets, but be able to use a variety of locations throughout the state to charge these vehicles and make sure that we can continue to do our business, but as we're doing it, reduce our carbon footprint. I think, Governor Murphy, through his executive order 100, the Energy Master Plan, which was recently adopted and announced, and S2252, have all given us a direction to be at 25% of our light duty fleet converted by 2025 and 100% by 2035. We're on target right now, if all goes according to Hoyle, to have converted 40% by 2025. And I think that's important. Again, this wouldn't be a charging infrastructure open to the general public. It would be in our maintenance facilities and our authority facilities and DOT facilities. But DEP is going to be working on the private fee-for-service charging stations that the general public could use, so we can continue to meet those goals. It's important. We have to be good stewards of the environment, even though many people look at us and say, well, you just come through and build roads and you don't care, you keep laying pavement. That's an old argument that really isn't true anymore, at least not for me. But when you look at some of the work we have done, you look at the DOT's project down at the Manahawkin Bay Bridge, and the conversion of the Cedar Bonnet Island to a natural estuary and a teaching spot where people can go and look at nature and look at the natural beauty of our waterways. That was a very unique project, and it was recently recognized by AASHTO with a regional award. And so we're very, very proud of that. I know that there's a question about the airport. I'm not sure that you're really asking me how the airport is performing, because you know that flight is down right now and it fluctuates. I have flown a couple times during this pandemic, and planes they're not full. I flew a particular airline that didn't sell center seats, which was very helpful. But I think that at the end of the day, from a revenue standpoint, the South Jersey Transportation Authority under Stephen's leadership has really been working to keep everyone afloat so that when we fully return to our travel and our vacations and all the things that are important to us, the airport will continue to be viable. They did receive recently a $580,000 grant by the U.S. Department of Transportation. And I think the grant will be used to market the airport, and that's very positive. I don't have information for you today on the sale of the airport or what the Port Authority is doing, so I can't help you in that regard. I think Steve would agree with me. Steve Mazur, who's on with me, we have had very little discussion or communication with the Port Authority on their study and what they're looking at. Hopefully, if we get back to a little bit more, I want to think of the word. I hate saying new normal, because there's really, in my book, there's no such thing. I still get up every morning, have my coffee, watch the news, shower, and come to work. That's about as normal as it gets. I have some different behaviors. I put a mask on, I social distance, but I don't want to call that a new normal. I think when we get back to more, I will say, business as usual, I think we'll be able to maybe spend a little bit more time talking to the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey and understanding what their thoughts are and what their goals are. But having said that, once we have that information, certainly we'll make sure that we share it publicly, and that those that have an interest, the stakeholders, understand what will be happening with the Atlantic City Airport. It's always a pleasure for me to be here and to be with all of you and share time. I appreciate, Marlene, the invitation. I appreciate you accommodating a governor's event yesterday and moving it to today. And with that, I will turn it back to, am I turning it back to you, Marlene, or Greg, to do the roundtable piece? You're muted.
Actually, to me, this is Gary. Thank you very much, Diane. Thank you, Commissioner Scaccetti. New Jersey DOT and the Turnpike and the SJTA just impacts businesses in so many ways, and we appreciate your transparent and honest approach to guiding the department. So we'd like to now include our roundtable participants in the discussion who are joining us on screen. And as a reminder, we also will have an opportunity for the audience to ask a question of the commissioner. So please use your Q&A feature to ask a question. And I see we already have a couple coming in, so that's great. Thank you for that. So with that, let me start the discussion. Commissioner, you mentioned earlier, we talked about the gas tax and how important it is. Traffic volumes were so far down. And, New Jersey just recently, increased the gas tax. I think it was 9.5 cents. Do you feel like that's going to be enough to replace what was lost in revenue from before? Just wanted you to just give us a sense for how that fits into the program moving forward.
So as I said earlier, we're in 2020, we're working off of our 2019 revenues, and we're just starting to work off of our fiscal 20 revenues. The calculation on the gas tax is done by the treasurer, and I did spend time reading it, believe it or not. For those of you who don't know, if you're looking for the language that pertains to the what I call the true up that happens in August on the gas tax, it's not in the Transportation Trust Fund Reauthorization Act, it's in the Corporate Tax Act. It is mandatory. The governor does not have flexibility based on the act to either adjust or skip a year. It's a shall, as I like to say. It's not a may. And what it is, it's based upon the revenue projections for the year. And so if the revenue that the gas tax actually generates does not meet the projection, then the gas tax is basically automatically adjusted. But understand that next year when we do this same exercise, if revenues are way up, then the gas tax can be adjusted back down. And I think, you know, in the hype of good headlines and, you know, everyone kind of, you know, hair on fire over the DOT's performance and the gas tax and all this, you know, I hate to say it, but I will say it, you know, I would just appreciate it if one of the people who like to tweet so much actually sat behind a DOT commissioner's desk or an executive director's desk or chief engineer's desk and understood what it took to run a toll agency or a DOT. That would be helpful. But at the end of the day, that gas tax can be adjusted in both directions. And Gary, as far as I'm concerned, that number is the number that says it should be sufficient to carry the program that we have of our size going forward. And so we have not reduced our capital program. We have not cut projects. We have not extended times on projects based on finances. And so we continue to have a very aggressive program. Our program this year, State Transportation Trust Fund program, is almost $1 billion. I want to say it's like 958 million. Mm. That is a very healthy program for us. When you combine it then with money provided to us from FHWA and the federal side of the program. To be honest, I'm far more concerned about the feds and the fact that we don't have a reauthorized highway trust fund coming out of the US DOT. That is critical, not just to New Jersey. There's 49, well, actually 51 others who depend on that federal trust fund, highway trust fund, just like we all are concerned about the state trust fund. And so I'll feel much better when I know the federal piece is in place. The state piece I'm comfortable with. And we will spend responsibly every penny of the gas tax that we receive. We just need the federal government to step up now and pass a reauthorization bill of their own so that we have a comfort level those projects can continue.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Let me hand it off to Rhonda. Your question.
Okay, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today and participate on this roundtable. Commissioner, as you know, Cross County Connection oversees several community shuttles in South Jersey, along with our partner SJTA. So I'd like to follow up on your comments that you made about the community shuttles. And I am thrilled and extremely grateful to hear your positive comments about these services. The current pandemic has reinforced the importance of these shuttles. While ridership is down, our ridership has not decreased nearly as much as it has on other public transit services because our shuttles are serving what we now call destinations, essential services. Our passengers work at essential services work sites. They do not have a car. If it was not for the shuttles, they would be unemployed. So I'd actually like to turn my question, since you did address it, into some suggestions for how we can move forward with sustaining these shuttles. We are currently facing a funding crisis, which will impact the sustainability of our shuttles in a very short period of time. The shuttles are funded primarily through New Jersey Transit grants, which require a 50% match. It has become increasingly difficult to find this match. The Federal Highway Administration grants require only a 20% match, and often NJDOT is able to provide them that match and reimburse those grantees 100% of project costs. So what I would like to suggest is that perhaps your department could spearhead some sort of meeting with representatives from New Jersey Transit and the community shuttle operators and others who oversee the shuttles, such as the TMAs and the counties. So we could have some discussions about the feasibility of decreasing that 50% match to keep it more in line with the Federal Highway Administration match. I'd also like to suggest that we talk to other agencies in the state who have a stake in the success of the community shuttles, such as New Jersey's Department of Labor and Workforce Development and Economic Development. I think if we were all to be able to have a conversation together, we might be able to identify other funding streams that could help these shuttles. And there's approximately 25 community shuttles statewide. So it's not just a South Jersey issue, it's a state issue as well. So thank you.
Rhonda, that's a great suggestion. I think the operators contract through the TMAs, correct?
Most of them do, yes.
Yeah, so no disrespect to the operators. I think I'd be really happy to be able to have that conversation with the TMAs, with DOT, and with transit and SJTA. I like to brag on SJTA a little bit because they do work in an area that no toll authority that I know of actually does. And it's a lot of community-based work. They serve their 6 counties very, very well. And I'm hoping with some of the fruits of the toll increase, we'll be able to expand some of those programs. And I've had that conversation with Stephen Doherty to be of better service. I don't know if I've said it to this group, I said it to other groups. You know, there's going to come a time when it's going to be the Department of Mobility, not the Department of Transportation. We have to look at the changing face of how we deliver our services. Let me be clear, there will always be roads. So long as there are ports and so long as there is freight, there will always be roads. So long as there are microtransit systems, there will always be roads. But we have to think more broadly and have better vision about the fact that we have communities that are underserved and economically disadvantaged that we need to raise up. And the only way we raise them up is getting them educational opportunities, good health care, and then good jobs. And so all of this discussion about, you know, wringing our hands and what do we do has to turn into action. You know, it's great to talk about stuff, but I really like action verbs. I like doing things. And so for me, Rhonda, I think it's a great suggestion. After this call, I'll certainly talk with Nicole Minutoli, who is our multimodal director, and we'll work on putting something together, be it virtual or be it in person in our large multi-purpose room where we can be together safely and socially distanced to have that discussion. I would suggest transit will be a tough place for us to squeeze more money out of since they struggle on their own. But we can have a responsible conversation about how we all work together. And I would do that before I would engage the Department of Labor or the Economic Development Authority, because frankly, those of you in transportation know, and I know Greg knows this, and I know Steve Mazur knows it, they look to the deep pockets, which are the transportation agencies that have revenue streams that support them. Unfortunately, the revenue streams supporting those agencies are very small. So you start to look at them having to have general fund subsidies, and we would stay away from that. We want to try to run transportation on the revenue streams that transportation provides. But it is certainly my goal to improve the way we handle the microtransit and the TMAs. You provide an extraordinarily valuable service to a wide range of demographics, and we appreciate that.
Thank you very much. We certainly appreciate your leadership, and I will discuss with the TMAs the discussion that we've just had and work with your office to get something together.
Great, thank you.
I'm pleased and excited. Thank you.
And great questions, and thank you for the answer. And then Steve.
Great. Good morning, Marlene and Commissioner Scaccetti. Thank you, excuse me, the opportunity to sit on this roundtable today. It's always great to see everybody, even if only virtually. Diane, you mentioned, you just actually touched a little bit on my question. We talked about funding, and of course, as a toll road was funded through tolls for our capital program, and we talked a little bit about the gas tax as well for funding the DOT projects. I was curious, the DOT recently announced a partnership with the Eastern Transportation Coalition to study an alternative approach to funding transportation projects, specifically the mileage-based user fee.
Mhm.
to determine if this was a sustainable funding model. I was hoping you could elaborate on the MBUF model and maybe if the department's done any kind of projections to see what kind of funding this would generate to support transportation.
Steve, that's a great question, and thank you for raising it. And some of you may have received an email from me, and if you haven't, you can certainly send me an email. So the Eastern Transportation Coalition was the I-95 Corridor Coalition. We changed our name because we actually had 2 states that are not on the corridor that have become very interested in the work we do. I want to say Tennessee and Alabama. And they really want it to be a part of who we were. So we allowed them to become members of I-95 Corridor Coalition, and then we quickly changed our name to meet up with our new membership. But the mileage-based user fee study is a USDOT grant program that is looking at whether or not we can generate successfully revenue based on the miles you drive instead of the gas you buy. So what is the fairer way to collect revenue? So today, you might have a car that gets 22 miles to the gallon, and so you're purchasing gas at a much better rate for the purposes of revenue generation than some of the newer cars that get maybe 35 or 40 miles to the gallon, or some of the hybrid vehicles. Or you're not buying gas at all because you have an electric vehicle. So you still use the road, you still contribute to the wear and tear of the highway system. How do we capture a model that is fair, where everyone who uses the facility actually pays? Now, being a toll person for the vast majority of my career, tolls are often based on a per mile charge. So is that a good model to look at? Or for the state highway system, do we look at something different? And so that's really what we're studying. We're trying, the way this works is if you decide you wanted to participate with us, you get a little onboard unit. It plugs into that little spot under your dashboard where the dealer plugs in his diagnostic equipment. So you plug it in and you forget about it. It's anonymous. You're never going to get a bill. It's really just tracking the miles you're driving. And so we're going to have about between 150 and 200 people participate. We have asked legislators, local officials, the entire DOT, Turnpike, South Jersey staff to participate in this so that Eastern States Coalition can collect the mileage data and determine what would it take in terms of a per mile charge to provide the necessary funding, and how would it work? And so how would it work across state lines? How would it work in terms of it being a billed number where we're not collecting it like we do today through a gas tax at the gas pump? We're waiting for people to pay us a different way. It's a study, and that's the most important thing I can say. And it is about data collection. No good decision that we make can be made without data. And so to that end, we are in phase 4 of data collection. Delaware has done this, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and now New Jersey, so that we get a base of information broad enough to make a decision about whether or not mileage-based user fees should continue to be studied. And so really it is people get nervous when we tell them we're doing this. There's no grand plan to change anything today. This is a grand plan to learn about the impacts of mileage-based user fees and whether that would be sufficient. We either have to continue to study it, or we have to decide it doesn't work and move on to something else. There are states that are using a mileage-based user fee model in the western part of the country, and they're smaller in terms of their transportation network. They're not as complex at any level as the eastern side of the country. So what may work in one place cannot just automatically be perceived to work anywhere else. So this is our opportunity to decide, is this a viable alternative? If it is, we continue to study it. If it's not, then you know what? We stop and we invest our time and our resources somewhere else to look at other options. So Stephen, a great question. if you have not received an invitation to participate and it's something you think you want to participate in, please do. For those of you who have insurance companies that make you put that onboard unit in, we are not testing your braking ability, your speed, or any of that stuff. We are really just looking at the number of miles you drive. And you're not going to get a bill from us, even a fake bill, to tell you this is what it would cost, because we don't have that information yet. So, you know, again, my mother always said I should have been a school teacher. I love school. I love learning. We learn every day, no matter how old we get. And this is a learning opportunity for us as professionals to decide if this is a viable alternative. So thanks for that question, Steve.
Thank you. So with a few minutes left, we got a few questions coming in from our participants. George Loebman asks, in these days of shrinking DOT staff with retirements and recent health issues, can you anticipate when the hiring freeze will be lifted?
No, excuse me. I can't. It really right now is hiring on a case-by-case basis. So for instance, we do a pretty substantial amount of hiring pre-snow season with temporary employees, and we have gotten permission to do that. If we have positions that are critical, we can go to the governor's office and ask if we can open it up and get folks on board. But we're obviously, with the state budget being as it is, the governor is still very concerned, notwithstanding the fact that most of the positions we hire at DOT are paid through the trust fund through chargebacks to projects. So we continue to talk about it. But I think, you know, for those of you who use the local aid center, you know, kudos to Mike Russo and his team in planning, multimodal, and grant administration. They got staff augmentation figured out very quickly. I think now you're going to see capital program management also focused on staff augmentation, contracts to make sure that we have design going out. We're not just using consultants as subject matter experts, but we're actually bringing them in to help us design some smaller projects so that we can keep the pipeline full. And so that is something that is definitely coming out of redistribution. We have a line item to bring in some firms to make sure that that money gets spent as we promised the feds. Because we asked for 40 the first year I was here, don't ask me why so low, 100 last year, and 150 this year. So you can pretty much figure out what I'm going to make them ask for next year, right? They're going to ask for 200 next year. And if we've performed well and have a good track record, I have no doubt that we'll get that extra money. So we're going to keep pushing. And if we need to keep using staff augment to hold us up in the meantime, that's what we'll do.
Great. Maybe let's try to fit just one last question in from Michael Eggington, kind of taking it a little bit north. Great news on Portal Bridge project. How's the outlook on the overall Gateway Tunnel project and securing support from the federal government?
Well, you know, I think that that's still a stretch. And I think given the fact that we're just about 60 days out from a presidential election, it's not something we're going to hear much on. So I think at this point, you know, we really have to wait until January, when there is an inaugural ceremony, and we either have our current president serves a second term, or we get a new president, and then we map out our route. But, you know, right now, you know, I take what I get. And right now the bird in hand is Portal North. That's, you know, a lot of people argue that that isn't going to change travel for our commuters because it doesn't add capacity. The argument here is it adds time savings. If that bridge is functioning correctly, then people get where they need to be in a more timely fashion. When trains run on time, people are happier, and then we work on capacity. If you know anything about the overall, still Gateway project is much different than ARC was. The Gateway project has at least 7 different pieces to it. There is a piece much later in the project life that would add a south portal bridge. So that would increase the capacity, but you cannot do that until you fix the tunnels. So it really is stepping this through a very large project very carefully to ensure that what we don't do things that actually hinder us as opposed to help us. So we'll keep pushing, Mike, don't you worry.
Great. Good questions. And Commissioner, thank you again. We really appreciate you taking the time into my moderators, Rhonda, Steve, and Greg. Thank you. Let me just turn it back to Marlene just for some closing remarks.
Well, thank you, and a special thank you to the Commissioner. I've learned so much today, and every year when you visit with us, I learn even more. But a special thank you for this year because I know you had to rearrange a whole bunch of things. Lisa in your office was great, and we thank her for that. To all of you who have participated, I think you'll agree with me that there's much more to do. And the Commissioner has always been very accessible, as has her office. So remember that. And of course, if we can be of any help to you on behalf of a transportation issue or any other, please let us know. Call us. We're in our office. So it would be highly unusual if the phone wasn't answered when you called in. But just as a reminder, this program was recorded, so it'll be on our website. If you want to revisit or if you want to share it with any of your colleagues, feel free to do that. I'd like to thank Ben in our office for being, I guess, our producer director for these virtual events, the world we're living in. And close by thanking our sponsors again, HNTB, Cross-County Connection, South Jersey Transportation Authority, Associated Construction Contractors of New Jersey, WSP USA, Thomas Boyd Communications, French and Perillo, Taylor Wiseman and Taylor, Triad Associates, Urban Engineers, and just finally, we wish you safety. We'd like to encourage you to maintain all of the executive orders that the governor has released and stay well. Let's hope that families, work families, and your private families are well. And we ask that you look after one another and keep in touch with us. And again, Commissioner, hats off. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marlene. Everybody have a great Labor Day weekend.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. You too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.